Today on the show, strategy plus action equals why looks matter. Great coaches and consultants like you have the ability to change people's lives and transform entire organizations. And your impact can often go far beyond the clients you work with. One of the reasons I love working with coaches and consultants is because of that ripple effect. This show is here to highlight your expertise and empower you with resources and new ideas to grow your business. Welcome to Strategy in Action. Bill Kenney is on the show today, and wow, we have a deep dive into this full immersive idea of brand, specifically B2B, B2B tech, even more specific, but we not only, broaden out in terms of B2B across the board, this business to business world, but it matters so much across all brands. Coaches, consultants can take what we're talking about here and apply it, look at their own businesses. Where am I utilizing some of these things? Where am I falling short? I love this subject so much. It's fascinating and interesting to me because it combines this idea of, visual elements, why they matter so much. And that's across the board. Of course, video and graphics and your website and all that stuff, but all the way down to how you show up and all that. It combines all those visual elements to the psychological components of both your company culture, what it represents, everyone in your organization, but the other side as well, getting into how your prospects, your customers, your clients respond to all these different elements. And when you really dig in, the way Bill and his team at Focus Lab, his team at Odi, the way they dig in and fully immerse you when you go through this with them in this idea of brand from all these elements, it's what it really takes to get a good handle on this idea of brand, as well as an execution of it out in the world. I love this conversation because it combines all of these things. And we certainly go down rabbit holes with this, but Bill provides such an amazing context and picture and example after example of his company, of clients, of more known companies, all of that, to really paint these pictures for us on why it's so important. You're absolutely going to love this conversation. And it's really important to take this in. If you're running a company, if you're at any level responsible for that brand and have those decisions of a company, it's so important to take this in. And especially in this B2B space, there's so much opportunity to stand out. So many companies are afraid to do so and afraid to be human and afraid to step out of the norm at all. And we're all humans, we have to remember that in the most, dry industries at all, it's still people interacting with each other. And that is a wonderful opportunity to connect to them and, build fans and customers and clients of your business. All right, let's jump in. Bill Kenney, welcome to the show.
Yo, what's up?
Oh man, excited to talk branding, to talk rebranding. I'm so glad Suzanne Taylor King, the wonderful, the amazing Suzanne Taylor King, introduced us. We had a great talk last week before, you know how time goes, whatever that was.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm excited. I've been digging into your book, Conquer Your Rebrand, and whether you like it or not, we're going to get into promoting that just because people got to know. They got to know the truth that is going into that, and I love it so much. So I really want to focus our conversation on this idea of the visual aspects of branding, rebranding, because it's funny. I feel like the pendulum has shifted too far the other way, and meaning brand used to be just like, oh, that equals logo. And everyone's out there talking, hey, brand isn't just a logo. You're absolutely right. It's not. But I think it's too far the other way that we don't focus enough, at least in the typical conversation around the visual aspects of this stuff. It is so much bigger, and I want to dig into some of those other aspects. But I'm excited to have you on here because you're somebody who really understands the full branding picture, but also really emphasizes that visual aspect, which is so important. So before we dig in even more down that road, though, I want to give people a little background. You know, you're CEO of Focus Lab and Odi, and what are those agencies, companies, and where are you right now, so people understand a little bit why Bill is the one on here talking about this amazing topic.
Yeah, I appreciate it. So I am, as you would all know now, Bill Kenney, CEO of Focus Lab and Odi. Those are two different agencies, and I can talk about why those are different, et cetera, later. I'm essentially a kid that grew up in a small town and liked art, drawing, went to school, didn't know what I wanted to do, became an art major, and turned that love for all things visual into a design career, right? So we've been building, Focus Lab was the first agency that we're still growing. That started 14 years ago. So that's how far in we are. Odi just passed its 1-year birthday. So we're well into this journey of what it looks like to build an agency, and now very specifically a brand agency, what it's like to serve from those early days, which is like mom and pop shops, right? When I was just trying to get out there into the world, to now working with all the way up to Series D and then public. We don't do a lot of publicly traded company work. It's generally our best fit is in this like Series B to Series D zone, but then Odi is born to serve seed stage, much smaller, kind of up-and-coming businesses, and that's where we sit. I guess I would also mention it's primarily B2B tech for us. It doesn't mean we don't do work outside of that sector, but that's kind of how we're positioned, and that's us in a nutshell. Team of 25 fully remote team members based in the U.S.
I love it. Yeah, and that is an important distinction because that is where we're going to focus our conversation today too, in that B2B world when we're talking about branding and rebranding, and certainly elements apply outside of that. But the reason I love this conversation, I love the book you've written and what your agency does, is because it's a very underserved market, this B2B world, when it comes to visual elements, branding, rebranding, and all of that. So I'm excited about that. And, you know, you talk about, you know, who the companies you serve, but they also go on to be, you know, post rebranding, you know,
Sure. Yes,
just massive too. So I want to make sure people understand that context. You're setting these folks up to, you know,
we're catching them in a
your
journey.
track record.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah, we're catching them at different parts of their journey. Like I said, sometimes it's Series A, has a different type of pain point. Sometimes it's Series C, Series D ramping up for IPO, different type of pain point. But we are a part of that journey that they're going up the mountain. And our job is to help them get up their beta, Sherpa, if you will, right? Like, how are we going to help you get to that next stage through the thing that we know, which is brand, which is really impactful and really powerful. And the companies that realize that would then partner with us to help them achieve those things. So yeah, we've seen some people go on to hit crazy milestones, right? From a Series B all the way to being public now for 3 years. And I see earnings reports come out on CNBC and I'm like, that company is so huge now, right? And I could never take credit for that and I would never want to, but I know we're a little element in that journey. Maybe we gave them some better boots to get from here to there kind of thing, you know? That's cool. It's actually really rewarding.
Oh yeah, that gives me chills thinking about it, because that same kind of thing when you work with a client and you see them go on to great, just again knowing that you had a piece of that, you were, whether it's something you physically created, a conversation you had, an idea that sparked for them where they took a direction.
Yes,
you're a piece of that. That's so fun.
It's pretty cool. I was in the city last week. Side note, we went to the Pantera concert in Madison Square Garden. That was awesome.
Oh, wow.
My son and I, he's 14 now, but we were walking from Penn Station. We were walking down to Times Square, and there was a big billboard of a client that we had worked with, and the logo very specifically that we had done. And it's cool to be able to see. I was like, hey, look, Riker, look, like my company, like we made that. Like I know that client, like we worked with them. And he's like, oh man, then he thinks like, you're a rock star, dude. Like you must feel so proud. I'm like, it's pretty cool. It's pretty cool.
That's awesome. Yeah, what I get from lately from my kids are just like, why aren't you famous, Dad? Like, because there's so many like actors I've worked with or something, they'll be in a commercial. It's like, oh, it's Dave. Holy crap, that's awesome. And they're just like, you freaking know everybody. Why aren't you famous? What's going on? I'm like, I don't know.
We're the behind the scenes characters that help people. And that really fits my personality and like the core of my DNA, which is to like help and support people. I get a lot of energy out of that. I don't need to be front and center. I get my joy out of lifting other people up and just playing my part.
Yeah, me either, says the guy who puts himself
on a podcast
in front of a camera and puts a show. Yeah, of course. Yeah, I'm totally behind the scenes. No, I enjoy being behind the scenes, and I'm obnoxious enough to put myself in the front of the scene as well. So there we go.
Same.
But I love this. So I'd love to I'm going to do this next, but I want to talk high level, your definition of brand and everything that means before we dig into really some of the visual aspects of it. But something that your book does well, and I'd love for you to kind of help us with this right now in Conquer Your Rebrand. Here's this handbook, right? Here's this is the playbook to go do this, or at least fully understand it. But first, there's like this mental hurdle you got to get through to even understand as a decision maker why this is even important.
That's right.
Can you kind of walk us through? Because I think that would help our listeners as well, set them up for why they should even take all this in today.
Yes. Yeah. So I'm well aware of that hurdle, having been now building this business for 14 years and hearing and working with clients. So much so that the foreword in the book is written by a past client about that hurdle for themselves, right? So you're hearing it from third party, not me. And then chapter 1 is also devoted to this hurdle, right? Which is to say, what's the ROI? Is it actually valuable? Is this just kind of like marketing, fun, visual things? Or is this actually a core element to my business? Does this matter at the fundamental level of the business? My strong argument, and hopefully Bob, who wrote the foreword, makes the clear argument that his first business, he didn't care about it, right? It was penny pinching and it was building a product. Customers care about the product. They care about the tool they're using. I need to solve their pain points specifically. That is still true, but what some founders can miss is on top of that and broader than that is brand. It is the business, what it stands for, what it cares about, because although the product is important, what about hiring? What about culture? What about trying to position yourself in a certain way so you meet customers where they are and then you serve up a product, right? Like the product is just part of a suite of things that the business needs to do. And brand is what defines how you go through and do those things, what you should build, what you shouldn't build, right? As a brand agency, part of our brand is branding. Now that gets super meta, but that does help inform what we're not going to do. We're not going to do all these other things, even if our product could do those things, because now we're going to start to get off brand, right? So all that's to say, what people need to realize is, yes, brand is more than a logo, even though I called that out as the thing I pointed to in New York City. It becomes the North Star of the organization, right? So when you're sitting down and you're saying, what are we going to do next? Or this thing we're struggling with, you got to have a thing that you can look to that helps align you. In real life, people do this through religion. I didn't plan to say this, but it came top of mind, right? Like sometimes people need a thing that grounds them and brings them back to center. Brand will do that for the organization. It will define what you should and shouldn't be doing, where you're going. Now, if you think about a boat that's rowing and everyone's rowing together, right? Smooth, less friction, you're going far and fast. Without brand as a North Star, your mission, your values, how you hire, why you hire, the products that you build, how you serve your customer, all these things, those oars are going in different directions. You might be successful to some degree. People will pass you. You'll wonder why, right? These things come back to brand. The issue is brand alone is a word like literally, what the fuck does that mean, right? Like, it's kind of like one of those words. It means 1,000 things to 1,000 people. That's the challenge. And hopefully my efforts in the foreword of the book in chapter 1 is to help break that word down a little bit and just to say, all right, let's look at some companies that really heavily invest in brand. Even maybe let's get away from the Cokes and the Nikes and the Apples. Those are obvious. Let's start to think about B2B specifically. Let's think about really uniquely positioned brands. I'll just use MailChimp because I use it in the book as an example, right? A newsletter tool. All I gave a shit about was building a better newsletter and invested nothing in brand. They wouldn't care about Freddie as their mascot, which is the monkey that becomes adored as a cultural icon with people in that space, both internally and externally in their business. They have personality, the way they write and they speak, whether it's social media, website, in person, adopts the energy of the brand, right? It prescribes how that company should act beyond the product. Wouldn't you know, Intuit comes along and buys them for like $12 billion. In the book, I make the argument, on paper, the value of the organization is this. What's that additional money coming from? What is that mystery value on top of the assets? Is brand. Intuit, as an old school B2B, I got my tie on, everything's tight, needs some of that to push forward in the new world. MailChimp's a perfect example of a tool they need in their suite. Yes, they need that tool. They also want that type of brand in their suite too, so they don't just continue to be old, stodgy tax tools. They're paying for brand. There's value there, right?
And that's what's interesting is we're in that space right now to where it feels like a transition time where people they can feel it, exactly what you just described. There's a value to this, but yet where's the line item? How do you quantify that?
Yep.
And we're getting to that. People are scrambling in the background to do so, whether it's, social media metric to this, and this equals this, and this attention and valued at X amount of dollars. But we're not there yet. And maybe we're never there.
That's a great point.
We're heading in that direction, right? To the point of the mental hurdle of ROI and all of that.
Yeah, we need to be very careful to not say, if I can't measure $1 1 year from now, then that the ROI of brand is not there. Gravity's pretty hard to I don't see it. I don't feel it around me right now. It doesn't mean it's not real in doing a thing, right? So brand is kind of one of these elusive, hard to see, hard to feel on the daily. Year over year, that hidden compounding effect starts to show up in real life. Why do I buy these headphones over a different set of headphones from a different supplier? Because they're Apple. They're not better. They're actually not better. My other Bose headphones are just as good, if not better. But I want these to go with the Apple products. I'm buying brand at that point. So now you're getting like a 1 + 1 = 3, right? They're able to upcharge on this because I will pay for brand. But how are they going to measure that? Apple can probably just common sense create that association now. But if you're a B2B company right now and you invest in that and you're trying to measure that dollar for dollar 1 year out, it becomes really hard. That's actually a little bit of a trap. You should not think that way. These things take a long time to compound. If I'm a really nice guy, I might not see the results of whatever that is in the first 6 months or something. I'll damn sure know it when everyone shows up at a funeral kind of thing, right? Right? But you got to give it time. Not everybody wants to give shit time. That's really important, right?
Yeah. And I don't know, does it mean it gets into really interesting territory, because does it mean that the most progressive leaders, potentially most successful in running a company like that, has to be the kind of person who just kind of goes on gut at a certain level?
Yes.
Of I'm just feeling this. I need something. I know we need something to rally around and do this and, be that, Apple of the concrete industry in Michigan. Do they need to be kind of wired that way, a little gut feeling, being able to just go in order to really pull that off?
So what we see is there are definitely two types of people. There are people that need measurement and people that don't need measurement. So it is helpful if they're wired that way. I don't think they need to be wired that way. But let me share a story that will help kind of maybe illuminate this from an additional perspective. So we were on a client on-site. That means we go out with the client, and for the first day of their project, we kind of are in person. We're doing exercises. We're building relationship, therefore building trust. These projects are long and often challenging. Trust is a key element in that. But what happened as we went on break, we came off some exercises, and it's just some downtime, right? So people go to the bathroom, they go get some food, whatever that is. And as we're left sitting around this table waiting for people to come back, there's probably like 8 of us total. One of the people on the client side look across the table to me in like, now picture like high rise in Seattle, all glass kind of walls, big wooden desk, right? And they're looking across. Hey, Bill, I have a question for you. Okay, sure. Yeah, we're on break. No pressure. Why does it seem like everybody that you work with goes on to, and it goes down the list, right? Raise more capital, be acquired, blah, blah, success. Why does it seem that that is the case? What I wouldn't do, and I didn't do, was say like, oh, that's because we're so awesome and we help people look so good and sound so good that they crush it. That's a part of it, but that's not the root reason why those people are successful. What I told them was, and I was on the spot, but this is true, people that can understand the power of brand, they don't have to know it in their blood. They don't have to be wired like we're talking about a minute ago, but they have to trust enough that there is something there that they should be doing, are on the right path, right? It's actually their ability to step into brand, whether they hired us, whether they hire another company, but their ability to understand the relevance and the importance of brand sets them on a different path. So again, like, do you need to be wired in that way? Gosh, it sure is helpful. It lets you get past those early kind of like, I don't think I need this, blah, 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 and pushing it off for 10 years. But like, if we all just sit back and you look around at the things that are successful, businesses that are successful, they are driven by brand, right? Yes, they're big names and they're easy for me to call out. Disney, the Coca-Colas of the world, Apple, again, Nike, Patagonia, your biggest companies. It's not a product necessarily, right? Like Disney has a big amusement park and I might like their movies, but ultimately you're buying into their ecosystem, which is buying into the brand itself. Or you actually are adverse to that. I have people that hate Apple. My brother-in-law, right? Avid, I will not buy Apple. He doesn't want the brand. But what I'm saying is if we all just removed this idea of measuring the return or thinking that it's just kind of like marketing, kind of tinfoil hat stuff and it's unnecessary, and we just look around us, you will be able to easily define the companies that win are definitely focusing on brand. Think about car companies, right? They got their brand right. Mercedes has their brand right. People buy that because it's a perception play. Let's also sit on that for a minute. Like, branding is a game of perception, and that's not a bad thing. It's not deception. It's not deceiving people, but it is perception. If a lawyer pulls up to your office and he's driving a broke down Civic, you're kind of like, I don't know if this guy can do a good job, right? That's so different if you're a concrete company. Yeah, maybe I hate to say it this way, but maybe the bar's a little bit lower. Maybe it's okay for the truck to be dirty or the van of trucks that come up for the big job to be dirty. But like, if the operation is tight, maybe all the people seem to dress the same. The dudes have the same collared shirt with the same logo, and the logo doesn't look like your brother-in-law made it. And the systems that you log into actually look modern day age. And when people call, they get somebody friendly on the phone. That's now all a brand experience. That shit will allow you to charge more, to beat out your competition, all that stuff. That's brand. So there you go. Does everybody need to be wired that way? No. But somehow they got to be able to see the other side. red pill or blue pill. Somehow you got to get the pill in. Once you get the pill, you're like, oh my God, I see it.
Yeah. You got to get there. That's it. I think that's a really good distinction. You can easy and flow and like, oh yeah, I get it. Cool. Let's do this thing. Or you need to sit back and, do this and get convinced.
Yes.
But if anybody will actually take in what you just described, they can be the most anti-Apple, Disney, Nike, all the ones that are usually shoved down their throats, which, just because maybe they're just counter that way, but they're going to have their version.
Correct.
Right. They're going to have
100%.
The local coffee shop that they love and will always go to and bring their friends when they come into town. They've got their version, and maybe that's the getting them there that it takes of like, well, what about this? What about that? And okay. And it really does become, like you were talking about earlier, becomes this shorthand, when you can point to the logo that represents this whole thing, or the green shirts that represent, it's not just because they're green, it's because of this meaning we have. And here's what it helps with that shorthand. And we're just wired as consumers and people. When we like something, we want to like it as much as we can. We want to, give me the resources to display this brand or do a little something.
Be associated with, right?
Yeah.
This thing aligns to me. I am a part of this thing. I'm a part of this coffee shop. I like this coffee shop because, what is it? Is it because the staff there? Maybe they're a little gritty and they feel more blue collar and down to earth, and you like that. Guess what? That's a part of that company's brand. Yeah. It's not about logo, but at the end of the day, it is about like all the things. What does that business stand for? And if you can get everything, kind of going back to the point earlier, rowing in the same direction. All right, if the coffee shop's brand is gritty and blue collar and all that, then everything should emulate that, start to finish. The menu, the way we associate and have experience here with our customers, the type of customers we attract, what our building looks like. You wouldn't want it to look modern, right? That's going to push my brother-in-law to use him again away, right? Dude rolls up in a truck in his Carhartt. He wants a certain type of place. And that, I think what we need to realize is that is also the brand at play. It's not just big business can use brand to drive prices up, which was another example earlier. It just is how we associate. I think your shorthand point is great. Going back to the concrete company or local contractors in town, right? So there actually is one. There's one in town. They drive their vans around, and there's a signature color on it that you just associate. You know that is that company. And by the way they even carry themselves, you're like, okay, that looks like a legit operation. Even before calling them, which I've never called them, I can assume maybe their price point is a little bit higher. I could even assume the type of demographic and the type of clientele they'll go after. Again, that is the brand at play. And if you can get that right, that's a really big superpower in your business, as opposed to, well, people don't give a shit about that. The shirt I wear doesn't matter. They just want me to come kill bugs in their house. I'm a bug guy. It's like, well, yeah, it is that, but there's so much more opportunity. I guess there's another way to say it. That's the floor. Yes, you can be fine. Your business can sustain. That's the floor. There's all this opportunity here. You can get to the second floor. You can get to a third floor. You can find your way into the attic. You can get over the house kind of thing if you start to think about brand.
Yeah. And that's a piece to this. Why I really want to talk about this visual aspect. And I promise everybody, we're almost there, really digging in deep. But there's so many layers. I just love it so much. And it really is that. It's like, if you want to be basic bug guy, be that, and that's fine. And maybe your little differentiator is bargain basement, or you can call him 24/7 or whatever. But don't get mad at big branded bug guy who's getting all your business.
Sure.
It's like you decided by making those choices, you positioned yourself in this spot. By doing nothing, you've positioned yourself and just you got to let that in, and that's business. And again, there's more layers to this I'm going to go into, especially for this B2B land with everything. But so let's sum up for folks this idea. We've talked around it and what brand is not and how you shouldn't think about it. What is this core element? What is brand? And then specifically B2B take on that.
It's the big loaded question, right? Like, if I open up the book, what's the definition of brand? And at this point, honestly, for my brand, I should have my same answer every time sentence that I just have memorized and I say it. I don't. But ultimately, the definition of brand is the sum of the experiences and perceptions that a customer is going to have with your company. That's it. They're either going to have lots of experiences, little experiences. They're going to have the sum of the parts is, again, like small or it's wide, but it is their feelings about your business is ultimately your brand. So coming back to your point, if you're just kind of solopreneur bug guy and you're just 24 hours a day, low price, that's your brand. That's what people will consider your brand, and your perception will be built off of that. And that's it. That is your brand. Whether you want to say that's not, that is what it is. Comcast, their brand is we serve 1,000 people, we give really shitty customer service, and like that's their brand. Whether they want to say it is or it isn't, like that's literally what their brand is. So much so that they have to change their name to Xfinity, right? So that people don't associate to that anymore through a name association. So it is that brand is so big and so wide. It's ultimately like, it's what the people say it is that are on the other side, which is why customer experience matters so much and all these other things, not just the product.
Yeah, it's almost synonymous with reputation, right?
That's
very closely
much
aligned.
better way to say it. It literally is like your company's reputation. If the reputation is great and stands for X, that is ultimately the brand. And then you would want to, again, make everything aligned to that. If you also want it to be that, right? You get all things going in that direction.
Well, yeah, and that's just like, it's so fun and messy, right? Because just like reputation, it's out of your control in the sense of it really is the world's response. Just like, my reputation out there, I can do certain things and I can show up in a certain way and be purposeful with that. But ultimately, my reputation is what my friends think it is, the people I meet on the street, And so just like you're saying, then it's a back and forth, right? So I can sit in a boardroom with you and your team and we can decide, okay, this is our brand now. This is what we're going to do. And we're going to roll that out. But then does it land, right?
Yes.
And with all that intent and everything that we put out there, then there's, you get the data back. And that's another piece of this to be really purposeful with. Get the data back. Is that landing the way we intended? And if not, okay, wow, this is better than we'd ever hoped. This is weird because they're thinking this way. Or we totally missed the mark. We're crashing and burning. Let's pivot, But it is, I think that's the other piece of it too, that when you alluded to the fact that, well, you stated, this takes time. Think of it long term.
Yes.
This is part of the reason why, not just because it takes time to grow, but it is an iteration, a back and forth with the world and your company.
That's right. Absolutely right. And are you living up to your promise or not? I can say my brand to the world is being a good guy that wants to help people. If I don't live up to that promise, that is not my brand. People are like, that guy's a liar, actually. His brand is a liar. He's a fake, right? In the same way that, if there's a new electric forward save the planet company, but they're not actually living by those ideals, then we don't believe that anymore. So no longer does that brand resonate. But if you take like a Patagonia, save the planet, everything they do feels aligned to save the planet, probably even deeper than we even see behind the door, right? Decisions they make and all that stuff. So therefore, that brand is aligned with what they say it is. They live up to their promise. People adopt their promise, they support their promise and cheer their promise, right? I want to buy Patagonia clothes because of that. Now you create a little culture. Now that brand is becoming a flywheel, right? Now it's becoming powerful. You don't live up to the promise, doesn't matter. Which is your word is perfect. Reputation. I'm gonna steal it.
Perfect. my gift to you.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, and so where your company comes in, your agency, like you spoke about, or like you're big in that area, right? Like you could touch other parts of the bit, but you're there for brand or rebrand of a company. Where does it come into play in terms of those parameters when you're working with someone in terms of this broader reach of brand in terms of, what you want your mission to be and what you want to display to the world? I imagine there's some companies who have that's just dialed in. Hey, this is what we have. We love this. We need a visual version of it. And then other, startups, tech startup who they've got a product going, but they haven't really thought about these kind of things. Is that part of something like the on-site where you're going to start pulling that information out of them?
Yeah, so that all happens in the strategy phase. Duh, no surprise there. But you're right, it is, it's kind of all walks of life on that front. It is, now here's where it gets interesting because like brand strategy and business strategy, it's almost impossible to find the line there, right? But we can't and should never come in and just change a business's entire strategy. No, you shouldn't be trying to save the planet. That trend is going away. You should actually be doing this, right? That's up to the owners, founders, board to be deciding. What we can help them do though is pull on threads and suss out what is most important. Maybe they're saying 7 different things and it's all over the place and it's hard to determine what is most important. Oh, okay, we suss that out. This is the core essence of what you're trying to do. Now let's build narrative and story to support that and language and visuals and blah. So yeah, we're trying to help people get to the root and then build back up from that because it is often all over the place. If it's completely unknown, which would be all the way down to it's a 3-person team, super early startup, that is the biggest perception play game, which is like, we and they don't yet know where they're ultimately going to go over the next 10 years. But they got to look the part for at least where they are right now. They have a single product and it does this. Let's make it look as good as it can look so people take you seriously and then you can fundraise. And as you move up the ladder, you will realize, oh, we were going to do this. We're actually going to do that. And we're really in love with going on this mission. We're going to Mars now. It's no longer the moon. Okay, now we can go deeper on brand with that more clear vision. So that's a little bit of a wonky answer, but we do help people navigate that. And a lot of it, honestly, is a bit of like brand therapy. It's really like people think they know what it is, and you talk more, and you're like, oh, that's interesting. Tell me, why did you make that decision? Oh, and then all of a sudden there can be moments of like, oh, that's actually what matters most. So let me tell you about ours if I was going to break it down as a key example. People could look at us and say, okay, well, their mission must be to create the best brands in the world, blah, blah, blah. No, you got to go deeper than that. Like what drives that? So if you're familiar with Simon Sinek's Golden Circle, the why, how, and what, you want to get down to the why. That's our what. Our what is we do it through branding. But why do we do what we do? Is because literally we love helping people. Brand is the vessel. I would still be fulfilled and happy if I was helping people in other ways. It just so happens that I became a designer out of art school, blah, blah, blah. And this became my vessel to help people. So our mission statement in our company is to unlock the potential in the people around us. That's our mission statement. That's hard to get to, though. You got to keep asking, but why? Right? Like we do branding, but why? Okay, but why? But why? You get all the way down to, oh, because we fucking like to help people. It makes us happy. We want to help people. Oh, okay. And then when we can say that, we can build off of that. Okay, so customer experience is key within our organization, so much so that we deliver hot sauce. It's not going to focus well on this. Oh yeah, you see the acronym at the bottom? SAUCE?
Yep.
Seek to achieve unforgettable customer experiences. It spells
beautiful.
sauce. So we made hot sauce. And at the end of every project, we sent every customer a box of sauce that we have locally made. It says, we care about customer experience. This is our final thank you to you. And we kind of bring it all back together. But we wouldn't be able to know to do those types of things if we were just, our mission is to create the best brands. All right, where do you go with that? Right? So like the concrete guy, the bug company, or big tech Series C, Series D needs to figure out, but at the end of the day, like, why do you get out of bed? That was one of our questions to ourselves. Like, but why do I get out of bed every day? It's not to make logos. It's not to pick color palettes. I like doing that, but that's not like why I get out of bed. I get out of bed because I want to work with awesome people and help them. I want them to go on and succeed and say, I can help them. So long answer, but that is part of what we're doing in the strategy portion of these projects, trying to suss all that out. So when we start building, we're building with intention. We're not just making stuff.
Yeah. And that you touched on, some of those visual elements where I really want to dig in with this too, because what I want to hammer home is it matters.
Yeah.
Like it so freaking matters. And you've touched on it. We've both touched on it here and there from the bug guy to the concrete. Like we are creatures of, we judge books by the cover.
Yeah.
We are exactly the opposite of the saying. That's how we're wired. And you can fight it, get mad at it, not wish that it weren't true, whatever you want to do, but that is the truth.
Yeah.
And the other piece that you haven't said yet, but is there, is that these visuals are important, from the logo, the consistency, the colors, the look in a lot of ways that I want to dig into. But yes, the baseline has to be there to support this. We're not
Correct.
saying that that's all that matters. We're saying that it matters first in the sense of when someone's interacting with your brand. Brand is what they're first bumping up against, and you don't get a chance to show up and be amazing if you don't look the part.
Correct. And people got to walk through the door, right? There has to be some version of the front of your restaurant that people say, that looks like a nice Italian restaurant. I want to walk into that. And then hopefully your food lives up to it. Brand, right? But you got to get them in the door. It can't look like a run-down dump,
Yeah, and there's these shorthands, right? You were talking about a company there close to you. There's looking good, looking professional, but also in these visual elements, from a book cover to a van going down the street, there's also some shorthand in, that looks like this. That looks like a business book or not.
Yes.
And that's another piece that I work with coaches, consultants all the time. That's why I'm in this book phase and website phase so much too for folks, because it's one thing to like, okay, that looks kind of cool, but it looks like you're in the archery business. I don't, or whatever that is, or, you're running a medieval times restaurant. I don't know what it is, but with that font, I don't know what's happening here.
Yes.
If you are a medieval times restaurant, then you're killing it. Right? Yeah. But if not, we've got a problem.
Yeah. So imagine I'm telling you all this stuff matters, and then I held up my book, and the cover looked like a 6-year-old made it, and like it was made in a day, right? You wouldn't take anything I'm saying seriously. It also has to look the part.
Yeah. Or if it were completely sharp, but it looked like a sci-fi novel, like I would be, what's going on here? What's happening?
Doesn't work.
Yeah. So where do you start in this phase when it is either, a rebrand is a different, I imagine. You've got some legacy elements that you're going to work with, but that younger company, that newer company, or just they may have been around for 10 years.
Easier. Yeah. Honestly, newer company is easier because you can really go in any direction. There's no legacy to have to consider. But there's plenty of rebrands we do where everything is thrown out. But I can give you a clear example. I kind of cut you off there, but tell me if this is getting to the root I'm going to start to talk very visual now. And I'm going to tie it back to the core essence of the things that we were just talking about before. More of the happy, lovey-dovey, find your essence bull crap. It's not bull crap. That was just a joke. So we were working with a company called SalesLoft. SalesLoft is really big in the sales tech space. They're like the number 2 player. You got big names out there. You got Outreach, you got SalesLoft. In working with the SalesLoft team and in the strategy phase, we did an exercise called the 3 attributes exercise. And in that exercise, what we're doing is we're trying to take like 80 different adjectives and whittle it down to 3 that best describe that organization. And again, it feels warm and fuzzy to some of the more technically minded people on these projects, but it's helpful, and I'll share how now. One of their words was sincere. As a sales tech company, they recognized they don't want to feel like another sales tool that's cold and inhuman and doesn't care about people in a world where sales could feel pretty aggressive, right? Your LinkedIn inbox gets smashed all the time, and who knows what's automated, what's not automated, right? So sales, especially today, needs to feel more human and more sincere. That was one of the words. Now, when you get to visuals and you say, okay, we need to look sincere too. Well, what does looking sincere look like in a tech company? Thankfully, the world has evolved and people are willing to flex and not just be boring and blue. Fun fact, SalesLoft was blue. We took them more to this this really beautiful green. There was deep greens, there was vibrant greens, but we went green. Green is generally more approachable, doesn't feel so tech, feels a little bit more human. It also represents growth, right? Think of leaves and grass and nature, but it also represents money, right? So there's a tie-in. But going even further on the sincere word, the typography, the actual logo, and for them, it ended up being a logo type, which means their logo is their name. There's no abstract mark that's accompanying that. Mm-hmm. It was a very specific choice we made on the type choice for that to match sincere. So if you're thinking tech, you're thinking clean. It needs to look advanced, progressive, technical, which is generally a sans serif typeface. No doohickeys off the edges. We'll dumb it down. For them, we did the exact opposite. We did not pick a technically driven type of typeface. It's a typeface that you actually wouldn't see in that industry at all. It was actually a pretty bold leap for them to say yes to that. But it's so closely aligned to this idea of we got to feel sincere, and we got to feel sincere everywhere. Not just highly technical website, but we're sincere when we're on the phone with you. No, that's not how brand works. Consistent. You used the word earlier. It has to be everywhere. The color feels more sincere. The typeface choices feel more sincere. The custom photography, not stock photography with people in suits, that does not feel sincere. Custom photography, photographer goes out to the office, gets people in real life settings, smiling, being normal humans, right? Then you get the story and the narrative of what this new brand is going to do, and you get that on their website. Now that really captures the essence. Without that word, now this is being a little bit dramatic, but without that word, how can you do that? Right? You get lost. These projects are so big. It's impossible to stay rooted. All right, we're making a logo, and all of a sudden 3 weeks in, after iteration and baby step in a different direction, you are off sincere. And if you don't have something to ground you, you end up with something that visually you like. You put it all back together, you're like, this shit doesn't even make sense together, right? Like somehow we got this green, but we got this highly technical logo, and well, what are we doing? Those silly 3 words will bring you back there. So those are some examples. Other things we did in there. If we want to stay on visuals for a minute, I'm going really long. Pattern language within that visual identity, right? Visual identity, colors, typeface, photography. You can have illustration styles. We did these, what felt like hand-drawn lines. Again, sincere, human touch. This shit feels real. It's not these hard lines and sharp gonna poke you. Everything is soft. Again, all of that is derived from decisions that are made in strategy, even something as simple as a word like sincere in a 1-hour exercise, right? You never know what's going to come out of those. One more example, you can cut it out if you want. We worked with a company called Rose. They make spreadsheets. y'all, think about spreadsheets. I lived in the South. I can say, y'all, they're trying to take on Excel. You don't take on Excel by trying to look like another Excel, right? You've got to be different. You got to figure out why you're different. For them, they want to be different. They embrace this idea of like, we're nerds and we want to have fun. Their spreadsheet, one of their words, was in and around this idea of like magic. It's magical in the way that you can pull APIs into the cells and all this stuff. Their brand took such an interesting twist with all these wizard's hands, the color palettes, the way that it talks about its services, but it's still trustworthy, right? Like you could do that stuff. It can still be a powerfully developed spreadsheet product, right? So I would just share some of those points on like how that early strategy work informs the actual visuals. You never just want to say, well, we're trying to beat Excel, just make us look cool.
Right.
Like literally, what does that mean? Okay, I could actually make you look cool. It's probably not going to work though.
Right.
And it won't be true to who you are. Or you won't be able to live it out. You won't be able to live out your promise because it's just, you're going to be like, well, it looks really classy, but we're kind of like not that. We feel like we're faking it.
Yeah. And that's just like everything else is going to trickle down through the organization with that feel and not being there.
That's right.
And it's interesting because, the same way the end goal of the brand itself is to be this filter and this North Star that everyone, okay, is that on brand? Is that decision on brand? Is that?
Yes.
Those three questions do exactly that during that brand process. It lets those three words rather, it lets you, have that filter and that, just like you said, like keep coming back. Okay, this is cool, but does it fit this? And does it fit this? And I imagine it gets messy really quickly with different hands in the
for sure, right? Because people have
to
to decide, do they like those words? You can't hinge the whole thing on 3 words either, right? You have to say, well, our customer base accept this. You can't let them determine everything, but you at least have to ask yourself, like, is this just too wild? If we're for a law firm rebranding and all of our clients are X, we can't have wizard's hands everywhere. Maybe in a different market you could, maybe, so you have to at least ask yourself that.
I mean, at the end of the day, there's certainly like, if you don't believe us, you're just not going to believe it. Of course.
That's right. Yep.
But I find myself in the last couple of years being in this space of trying to figure out a way to help and convince and usher along this idea of, for B2B brands, and specifically on LinkedIn. You live on LinkedIn. I live on LinkedIn. We see it all the time. The boring upon boring upon boring that is there, like, you don't have to be a vaudeville, act and be crazy.
Correct.
But bring some life, bring some humanity into your brands. How can we help these folks who feel like they're in a boring industry and who are, scared to death to do anything outside the lines because they're in this legacy industry or something? How can we help them? Or is it a lost cause? How can we help them?
Nothing's ever a lost cause in my book. That's a strength and a weakness, but yeah, carry on.
No, but that's exactly it. How do we help them come to the light a little bit and start to, what's a small step? Hey, I'm not ready for an entire rebrand, but I know I need some humanity in my look, in my company, in my feel. What's that baby step that we can get them headed in the right direction?
Yeah, I think it's important for everybody to understand, like, you don't need to completely reinvent yourself, right? These don't have to be giant projects. And the examples I'm giving, they are because they're these mega companies that have gone through mergers and acquisitions, and they're chasing a certain rabbit. Not everybody's chasing that rabbit, but it's very simple. Coming back to what we just talked about a minute ago, it's very simple for people to sit down, any business owner, and say, what are the 3 characteristics that are at the core of my business, regardless of what the business offering is? Like, what is that? Spend some time with that, and then just look at what's out in the world and just ask yourself, like, is it saying, showing, and feeling that way? You don't have to change everything. You might say like, well, yeah, the way I interact with people is exactly those words I landed on, but my website, kind of boring, kind of stale. Where can you add a little bit of love on one of those words? And I'm just talking like writing now. I'm not even talking like revamp your whole website. Change the opening statement. Maybe it feels super businessy and you're never businessy. So it's kind of funny, right? Like I keep coming back to this like local contractor thing, but maybe that's more relatable for everybody. I don't know.
My head keeps going there too. Like a landscaping company, a construction company.
You find somebody online, it feels all serious and bland, but then the person shows up and they're awesome, right? They got a ton of personality, but you're like, shit, if that was on your site, like it would really capture who you are and it'd be so much better. So you could do baby steps. There are also ways to baby step your way into better design and to hire freelancers. Like these things don't have to be crazy expensive now. But what it does require is like stepping away from your business for a minute and actually just noodling on the disconnect. That doesn't take money. All that takes is time. When people pay us to go through these rebrands, I think what they often overlook is this idea that they are going to get now that accountability partner to sit down with them and do what I'm telling people to do here with a partner and help extract out of them. That's so valuable, right? That's why there are therapists, right? Let me sit down and tell you the things okay, what did you think about this? Did you think about that? That is just as much of the exercise as the outcomes. People could start that process alone. You can sit down. What do I think I'm not representing well? Why do I really get out of bed every day? What do I care about? Am I trying to act too businessy when that world is quickly going away? Right? Like, I'm 45 now. I still think that I'm young, but like at some point, people my age are essentially all the buyers. Like I got skateboards on the wall and shit, right? Like I don't need super businessy. I can still pay a premium for services and hire people and pay for B2B SaaS tools for my company and not have them feel like 1980s IBM. That world is kind of gone. People are still kind of holding on to that only out of fear. But the leaders in B2B tech are breaking that mold fast. The biggest, if you go through all those verticals, any Forrester, like people in the upper right quadrant, they're going to be loud and proud. And they're going to be leaning on brands, bold colors, vibrant stance, strong opinions. They're not just trying to like, I don't want to disrupt. I'm just gonna be over here and stay quiet and I don't want to break anything. Like the path to success is not breaking things. That's like stale and tired. Like don't go batshit crazy, but the path to success is trying and breaking things. And brand is one of those steps you got to take. You got to get out and do that.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I love that. And just remember your humanity and that person that's going to be sitting across from you, your sales rep, the buy button, they're human as well.
Correct.
And that's actually a superpower. It's a great gift because you have connection points, because they're a human. And we as humans like things and don't like things. You can tap into these elements and gain, customers that you never would have. You could triple your business because you tap into that and you embrace this aspect of humanity through all of this. And it's huge.
We're a great example of that exact point, which is to say when people call us and they talk with Janina or Will on our team, they're kind of the front line of talking to incoming prospects. A lot of the feedback we get, people that hired us and maybe people that also decide maybe we can't do it now, but we'll come back later. It is, I enjoyed talking with you all so much. It felt very down to earth, felt very relatable. It felt very practical. You made this not scary for me. That's a human thing, right? And that is us being on brand, right? We're here to help people. I could have created a perception in a business that we're going to be the highest flyer. We're going to be this high-toting, award-winning New York City agency vibe, right? But like what we know to be true is like a lot of people don't want that. That's not to knock New York City agencies, but like A lot of people don't want that. They want something like they just want to feel I'm talking to normal, everyday person. Look at me, right? Like I didn't dress up trying to look any particular way other than myself for this call. And that's how we operate as a business. And we get so much praise on that. People see that. And to your point, you could do that in any business. I was just meeting, this is another great example. I was just meeting with one of our new clients. They're massive. They're growing like at an insane rate. It's going to be a name that when it drops this year, a ton of people in our space, B2B tech, they all know this company. I do CEO to CEO meetings at the beginning of the project to have kind of a keep it real. Hey, you excited? You nervous? Here's where I see CEOs go sideways. Let me try to help you off the record. Kind of like, let's just have a keep it real conversation so I can give you as much information and protect you from your own ailments potentially as possible. But going into that, I asked the CMO, hey, look, what's the vibe of the CEO? Is he chill? Like, I want to make sure that I'm showing up appropriate too, right? I don't want to look like this if all of a sudden he's going to be fully suited up and he doesn't take me serious. She's like, oh, he's totally going to be your vibe. He always has a hat on backwards too. Dude loves sports, loves this. He's kind of more of like an extreme sport guy. I'm like, this guy's going to be my jam. My point being, that's today's world. Be yourself. Just be yourself. Being yourself is living out your brand. You're not going to fit everybody, but you're not supposed to, right? A brand is not supposed to reach everybody unless you literally are the Microsofts and the Apples of the world. They have to try to appeal to everybody. We, small businesses, don't. You appeal and you attract the people that are more like you. And again, that is living out your brand. I would hate it every day if I showed up faking it in a suit, trying to get high profile clients. That would suck for me. I literally would hate that.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, and it's this great dance you talked about earlier too of, you know, the 3-person company who's just starting off. They've got one product, but it's this balance of, okay, looking the part of a bigger company, of that next level you want to get to.
Yes.
Without, there's not a faking it. Again, we're all talking about the substance is there, right? You can, you can deliver, and not being afraid to jump in, especially these days with the help of a Focus Lab, of a Bill Kenney. You know, you can really position yourself visually and everything around to just have that vibe of a company at the, 2 levels above maybe where you are, but you can be there.
Correct.
And it's so important to do that, because it's just, again, it's another way. You got to get your foot in the door so that you can even have a chance to show up. And it's blending that. And I say balancing because it's balancing that with what you were just talking about of being yourself, being whatever vibe that 3-person company has, right?
That's
and
right.
You can do both, I promise you.
Yes, you can absolutely do both. You can look like you're Series B, but you're only seed stage. And we actually, people tell us that, man. After the work we did, you can tell they're approaching us differently. We're able to get into rooms and conversations we couldn't get into before. They're not lying. They're not saying they're Series B. They just look so sharp and so put together that people take them more serious. There's nothing wrong with that. Again, it's not deception, but it is a strong game of perception. And really what people need to really recognize is like your brand is either working for you or against you. There's no middle ground. It's either pulling you forward or it's walking you backwards. And you need to figure out which of those is it doing. If you don't know the answer, it's walking you backwards. Let's be clear.
Exactly.
Right? And that's not a sales pitch to say everybody's going to hire us. It's just, again, my goal is to help illuminate this idea to people. I don't care how they solve it. If it's us, not us, on the road, whatever. It's just so important. I think a lot of people miss how impactful brand can be, which is why I'm standing on my soapbox, just trying to help people understand. If anything, spend $12 and buy my book and read the first chapter, right? That will be worth your $12 spend, and you can chuck the rest.
Exactly. Just to get it through and embrace, like let this seep in a little bit into your pores.
Because you'll hear other examples of people that are not me, that are past customers, that did not believe, true ROI examples, all that. And you'll be like, oh, all right, I see it. Maybe it's not for me yet, but I understand what they're saying. I cringe to think of a world where people don't care about it and they get 40 years into business and then they kind of don't retire. And it's like, oh, there's so much missed opportunity there. So much.
Yeah, big time. I want to wrap up. I have this one question as I was going through the book and everything too that I'd love to get your take on is what's a bad reason to be going through a rebrand? Have you
Oh,
encountered those folks who are like, yeah, you're trying to solve something with a rebrand that's not a thing? Have you encountered that side of things?
that's a fantastic question. I don't know that I've ever been asked that. So I think I'm going to take it in two different directions. I don't know if this is a bad reason, but it's the wrong reason. A lot of people will come to us and say, I need a new website, right? So we would consider that a symptom. That's a symptom of a larger problem. The brand is broken. If we're going to go through, we're going to make your website all new, we're going to try to figure out everything new that you need to say, but well, that's essentially doing brand work on your website. Let's step all the way back and come back to the root. It doesn't take that much longer, right? You're talking about you want to run this business for another 10, 20 years. Let's add another month or two, God forbid. Let's slow down. Let's address the brand in all the ways, and we'll bring all that forward to the website. By the time we get to the website, everything will be decided. Colors, type, language, story, product offer, blah, blah, blah. And we'll have reason and rules to build it all out instead of just making a pretty new website. I just got one of these calls yesterday, right? We need a pretty new website. Man, that's a tough call to walk people backwards because like they're not there mentally, right? So to them, it sounds like you're trying to add in more work, you're trying to drive the price up. I don't need that. Trust me, I'm not. Okay, so that would be, that's more of a symptom play. I don't know. It's not clear to me what would be a truly bad reason to rebrand, right? You've got reasons. Go ahead.
And maybe not. Maybe it's even more of a, you just don't need that. I think that's what came up in my head is maybe if someone's just, and I don't mean a Comcast over to Xfinity kind of reason, even not even going down that road, but a more of a, I'm the CEO and I just got this position and like, let's just rebrand. Or, is it, and wondering if you've encountered it, are they trying to fix culture with a rebrand, like a new logo? And I guess that's where my head was. Have you encountered any of those sort of, I'll call them wrong reasons, just because it's like, that's not what this is about. It's not a fix for that.
Yeah. So I have to be hyper self-aware and recognize my own bubble, which is like brand can solve a lot of things. So that's why it's actually hard for me. Like if there's a cultural issue, brand can help solve that, in my opinion. And we could spend another 30 minutes talking about how like it can affect all these things. Sometimes though, a client might come to us and we actually feel like maybe their brand is not all that off or underperforming. And even if you want to go deeper and think visually, sometimes we're working with a company like, it's going to be hard to make that better than what it is. I remember one specific project like 7 years ago, me and the designer are looking at each other like, how are we going to make that better? Their stuff already looks like Apple. How are we going to, and they want to look like Apple. How can we make it look more like Apple? Right. So I wouldn't say that that's like a bad reason. And ultimately we did add some new assets and brought like an elevated look to it, but it wasn't dynamically different. Where some of the other projects are just straight like home runs, right? You're going to crush it because the bar is so low and there's so much opportunity. I don't know that there's a bad reason other than like, you don't need it. People that come to us, and maybe this is why I'm struggling, nobody comes to us really if they don't need it necessarily. We only hear from the people that are like having trouble recruiting, right? That's a big one. If you don't look like an Italian restaurant people want to walk into, you probably can't recruit servers to work there because there's no, like you need brand to uplift all those things. People want to work for Tesla. I know that's maybe becoming in question with Elon as he gets wilder, but they want to work there because of what the brand stands for. They don't really want to work for like Chevy. What does Chevy stand for? I don't know, but I know Tesla wants to build electric cars in an effort to help the planet. That's a mission people can get behind. That's brand. That's the brand speaking. Right. So
I think the answer you gave first is actually the best one. And without realizing that's the one I wanted in that as my head went to that. I think that's the the biggest answer is not a bad reason to rebrand, but an incomplete reason.
Yes, symptom related.
Exactly.
Yes,
and
we need,
like,
generally they're going to be like, we need a new website. Our sales decks are outdated. We're showing up at a conference and we need a new conference booth, but we're working with all these legacy assets and legacy narrative, it's all the symptoms that people see. Those would be the wrong, those are the
incomplete.
They're the wrong lens to look through, but it still leads them to the right area of opportunity, which would be brand.
Yeah, and that's the piece, is your job, your team's job, to guide them like, yes, you do need new sales material. We agree with you. We can see it, but it's deeper than that. And here's why. And that's such an issue. I'm fascinated with all of it because it gets into then, well, how is your recruiting these days? How are your sales? As you can start to answer, like, I didn't come to you for that. I know, just curious, gathering the data, and you can start to build, and then you can show them, here's how this could help all of it. You're going to go through almost the same effort. Let's do this, like you talked about earlier with the website example.
Do it right. Yeah, don't Band-Aid it. Don't come in and Band-Aid a website and Band-Aid some sales materials, or like, just step back and do it right. The investment is not that much more. It doesn't take that much more time overall. And from a timeline perspective, it'll take more mental energy because you're not maybe ready to step that far back into why does your company exist and what is its mission and vision. And I should also be clear, like, sometimes we go back and we do some of that retooling and it's very efficient because that founder, owner, CEO, whatever, is pretty clear. But we're at least going to go back there and double check that. All right. It's okay. Now we're back over here. Good. Instead of, what we don't want to do is build flashy websites that don't move the needle. We could do that, right? We could be the type of company that doesn't care about customer experience and helping people and just say, you need a website, we'll give you a website. And laugh in the background and say, that's not really going to help them, but they want to pay us. That's just not us. We don't want to do that. So we'll stick our neck out there and be like, I don't think you need that. You need this other thing. And they can either tell us to screw off or say, geez, that was really helpful. Thank you.
Yep. I love it. All right. So somebody's listening. Who is that person, that decision maker out there, a company that they're working for or own, who is just your sweet spot of a client, a conversation, and then how do they reach out to you?
So our primary point person on every project, which kind of becomes our ICP, if we want to use B2B SaaS language, or I guess modern day kind of business language, our customer profile really is a chief marketing officer. They're generally the person that has either been in that company long enough to see that the brand is failing it, or they've just been brought on because that brand is failing. And now that founder is like, we're going to bring somebody in, they're really going to act on this. But very adjacent to them, we have founders, right? So sometimes they don't even have that marketing person yet, but they're a startup and they understand the value. They are wired that way, to go back to that point. But we have a secret agent. The secret agent is designers, writers, and strategists. It is the people that have to act most often on behalf of that brand and create assets with that brand that feel the pain sometimes most acutely. So when that rebrand topic comes up, maybe at the higher level C-suite, they're saying, I follow this company. I've been following them for 5 years. They do kick-ass work. You should absolutely hire them. So they kind of Trojan horse us into the conversation where maybe we weren't existent, and now we're one of 5 people being kind of interviewed for the job. So those are kind of our people right there. That's our tribe.
Yeah, and you've got, that's what's so beautiful with the book too, is like it's a tool for them, for those secret agents to like, here, take a read.
Go read this book.
Yeah, you don't have to trust me. Read this book. Look at this site. Look at these examples. Yeah.
Yeah, let me be really clear in the book pitch here. The first 2 to 3 chapters is written more to the CEO and the founder, right? So if you're a marketer or anybody else listening, you're like, I can't get my founder over the hump. All you tell them is just spend one night and read a chapter or 2 and then be done. Because really the rest of the book, the next 8 chapters, are written to the marketing person, the person that's going to execute on the work. And it's not trying to convince them that brand's important. They already know that. I don't need to write that to that person. So I write that to the first profile. The rest is how we do our process. This is for them to read that and say, oh, this is how they go through strategy. This is what they think about market research. This is why they don't do detailed market research. Oh, this is how they're going to go through the design process. So they can read that and know exactly what they're going to get from us. It's no longer a pitch. It's purely a playbook. And if they say, I like this playbook, that's who I want to work with. It's our exact process. I put it out there, which means a bunch of other agencies buy it too. And they're like, I want to know how they do their stuff. That's great. I don't care. It aligns to our brand, helping people. I don't give a shit.
I love it. I love it. Man, this has been phenomenal. I really appreciate the time and letting me weave and ramble and all of this, because I love this stuff so much. And I try to preach it from the rafters. I'm somebody who is, I can work my way through some design elements and make stuff, but I'm more of that, like, this looks good. I couldn't explain to you why this is professional, but I promise you, I trust my taste, at least, you know? and so I love to have conversations with folks like you who have that language and have that description, and, you know, you have that graphic design insight to know, like, well, it's because this is, I love that
because
stuff
it's
so
spaced
much.
out better and things are smaller and they're not big and clunky and the colors are not fighting each other. And
all that fun stuff. So how do people reach out and connect with you?
Yeah, so the best primary place is LinkedIn. Surprise! Find me on LinkedIn, Bill Kenney. But you can find me on basically any platform at Bill S for Sam Kenney, Kenney. That's my handle for Twitter, Instagram. But I spend most of my time on LinkedIn, and you can find the book on conqueryourrebrand.com.
Fantastic, Bill. Thank you so much. Thanks for being here and for doing the work you do.
A pleasure. Thank you for caring about this important subject.
Absolutely. And we'll see you all next time. Thanks so much for tuning in and being a part of this show. If you want help creating authority-building video content or even a client-generating show of your own, go to MediaLeadsCo.com and let's connect. I'll talk to you soon on the next Strategy in Action.
This show is powered by Media Leads. To get your next great podcast produced, go to MediaLeadsCo.com.